Welcome back to the European Bureaucracy Unit. I am Professor Tuxie, your guide through the wonderfully complex labyrinth of European Union regulations. In our last lecture, we discussed how the European Union waged war on telecom giants to absolutely destroy mobile roaming charges. Today, we are moving from roaming data to roaming humans. Specifically, we are looking at the millions of students who pack their bags every year. We are diving into the legendary Erasmus program, the initiative that pays young Europeans to study in another country. Before the 1980s, attempting to study in another European country was an absolute administrative nightmare. It was a dark age of bureaucracy. Your home university would look at foreign exam results as if they were written in ancient, undecipherable hieroglyphs. Nothing was standardized. You had to negotiate credit transfers individually, fighting endless battles with university administrators who refused to acknowledge classes taken abroad. Because nothing transferred easily, a semester spent abroad was practically a semester lost from your degree. It delayed graduation significantly. The European Union decided this friction was a terrible waste of potential. They wanted students to mix, share ideas, and travel freely. They drew inspiration from Desiderius Erasmus of Rotterdam, a Renaissance philosopher who traveled relentlessly across Europe to teach and learn. But this is the European Union, so naturally they had to turn his noble name into a delightfully forced, bureaucratic backronym. It officially stands for the European Region Action Scheme for the Mobility of University Students. It is a masterpiece of administrative naming. The program officially launched in 1987, stepping bravely into a world divided by rigid national education systems. Several member states were initially very skeptical. They aggressively questioned why taxpayer money should fund international travel for young students. Because of this hesitation, the very first cohort was incredibly small. Just over 3,000 brave students participated in the first year. Today, that tiny stream has turned into an absolute tidal wave of academic mobility. Millions of citizens have now participated in the program. But how does the EU make different education systems actually cooperate? The secret weapon is the European Credit Transfer and Accumulation System. Think of these credits as a unified currency, but instead of buying an espresso, this currency buys universal academic recognition. 1 full year of academic study equals exactly 60 credits, regardless of whether you are studying in sunny Portugal or snowy Poland. This standardized unit forces universities across the continent to finally speak the exact same academic language. It removes the friction completely. Of course, getting the funding requires filling out some paperwork. Students must apply for a specific grant to help cover their living expenses. The grant amounts are carefully calculated based on the cost of living in the destination country. Bureaucratic fairness at its finest. If you choose to study in a highly expensive northern capital, you receive slightly more funding than if you move to a cheaper southern city. Before a student leaves, they must sign a learning agreement. This is a sacred bureaucratic pact between the student and both universities. It provides a legal guarantee that if you pass your agreed classes abroad, your home university must absolutely accept those credits. However, the reality of matching courses is tricky. Often, the class you wanted is cancelled, or the syllabus completely changes upon arrival. This leads to the dreaded modification phase, where students frantically email professors to get new classes approved before the deadline expires. Students are also required to take online linguistic support tests. The EU loves to measure exactly how much your language skills improve. But let us be entirely honest about the academic rigor. The true education on an exchange program rarely happens inside the lecture hall. The real learning begins the moment you step off the train, dragging an oversized suitcase into a completely unfamiliar European city. The shared dormitory kitchen quickly becomes a chaotic laboratory of cultural exchange. It is here that the true integration actually takes place. It is where Mediterranean students look on in sheer, unadulterated horror as their new northern friends casually put ketchup on traditional pasta. It is where students from the sunny south experience the harsh, freezing, sunless reality of a northern European winter for the first time, and where introverted northern students are forced to survive the intense social endurance required for a traditional, extremely late Spanish dinner. They communicate in a delightful new dialect of broken English, slowly absorbing vocabulary and slang from each other's native tongues. This shared struggle to cook, communicate, and survive creates incredibly deep bonds that completely transcend ancient national borders and historical prejudices. In 2014, the EU added a massive plus sign to the program. Erasmus Plus was born, bringing a huge expansion. They realized mobility should not be restricted to traditional university degrees. They opened the financial floodgates to apprentices learning vocational trades. They included school teachers seeking new educational methods, allowing staff members to travel and exchange best practices across the continent. They even extended the funding to youth workers and grassroots sports staff. The bureaucracy expanded its loving embrace to almost everyone. To pay for all this glorious mobility, the European Union dedicates a staggering budget of over 26 billion euros. You might ask why the Union is willing to spend so much money simply to send young people away from their home countries. Because it is the ultimate long-term investment in European integration. It actively builds a shared European identity from the ground up. When you have shared a tiny, overpriced apartment with people from 4 different countries, toxic nationalism starts to look incredibly silly. And then there is the beautiful, completely unintended demographic consequence of this massive bureaucratic program, the romance factor. When you mix millions of young, adventurous people in foreign cities away from their parents, cross-border romance is mathematically inevitable. Countless international relationships have blossomed from these exchanges, leading to tens of thousands of cross-border marriages over the decades. The Commission proudly estimates there are over 1 million Erasmus babies born to couples who originally met during their study abroad. It is quite literally the most successful matchmaking service ever funded by a massive international administrative institution. Sadly, there have been step-backs. Following Brexit, the United Kingdom formally decided to withdraw from the Erasmus program entirely. The UK launched their own domestic alternative called the Turing Scheme. While it is a noble effort, it lacks the reciprocal magic of Erasmus. Many British and European students still deeply mourn the loss of mutual exchange, proving just how beloved the original program truly is. Despite these geopolitical setbacks, Erasmus remains the beating heart of the European project. It is a resounding triumph of soft power. It proves that the best way to unite a fractured continent is not just through complex trade deals and dry economic treaties. The best way is by giving the youth a train ticket, a modest financial stipend, and the absolute freedom to explore. It teaches them that despite our different languages, our bizarre culinary habits, and our historical baggage, we are ultimately one community. It is the most brilliant, most expensive, and most wonderfully messy social experiment the European Union has ever successfully pulled off. If you want to truly understand Europe, do not read a treaty. Try assembling flat-pack furniture with a foreign roommate while speaking broken French. I hope you enjoyed this journey into the academic roaming of Europe. Keep your transcripts safe and your learning agreements signed. Class dismissed.